So I attended Gen Con 2025 in Indianapolis with a couple of friends, and I got to playtest Ghost Galaxy's new card game, Echo of Omens. Now, I'm sure you know I'm a big fan of Ghost Galaxy's main IP, KeyForge, and I've been playing it pretty heavily for almost 2 years now. Now, I was a bit skeptical when I heard that Ghost Galaxy was releasing a new card game, especially when KeyForge has been sort of knocking at death's door since COVID. I was worried this would be the final nail in the coffin for KeyForge. I'm still not 100% sure what this means for KeyForge, but what I do know is that Ghost Galaxy definitely knows what they're doing when it comes to making card games. Echo of Omens was so much fun, and was probably the highlight of my Gen Con demoing experience. I may be biased because I love Ghost Galaxy, but even my gaming partner, who had no idea who GG even was, they were very impressed by this game. I do want to add a disclaimer saying I do not work for Ghost Galaxy, nor do I have any family or friends working for them. I also want to state that I did get permission to talk about this game freely and show off the cars before making this video. There's no NDA or anything like that. And I do want to absolutely state that this game is in its very, very early stages, and literally everything in this game is subject to change. So everything I'm going to show you, it's possible that it won't even be there tomorrow. So yeah. So to start by answering some questions, no, Echo of Omens will not be an LCG where you buy packs or sets that guarantee certain cards. It will also not be a deck building game like Dominion or Ascension. It'll be more of a traditional TCG like Magic the Gathering, where you can buy starter decks but then be able to upgrade your deck with booster packs and singles and things like that. Now, this may be a turnoff to a lot of players, since the beauty of KeyForge, for example, is the lack of deck construction and randomly generated decks to play in a sealed format. And I'm also skeptical about this because typically I don't like constructed deck games like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Flesh and Blood or anything like that. I hate the concept of like net decking or meta decks where you can just go online and Google like best decks to play in the current year, and then you buy the singles and then you just take over at locals. Like, I don't like that pay to win BS, but most people prefer that when playing TCGs, so whatever. Anyway, I'll try not to make this video any longer than it needs to be. Echo of Omens is a two-player asymmetrical TCG, where one side plays as the heroes and the other side plays as the overlords. Each side has a different win condition that they're trying to achieve. If you're familiar with Netrunner, it's very much similar to that game, but it's got like a dark fantasy setting. My memory is very, very foggy about the rules, since I pretty much got no sleep at Gen Con, and I played it, I think, on Thursday. So there's no public rule book yet. So I'm not 100% confident about these rules. So a lot of these things I might be completely wrong about, but just bear with me. Oh, and by the way, shout out to Seth and Josh with Ghost Galaxy though, for doing like an excellent job at teaching the game. Okay, so at the start of the game, the hero will have their hero card and then 2 starting companion cards in play. The rest of the deck is going to consist of allies, which are like kind of like your heroes and companions here, but they're just like not nearly as powerful, but they do pretty much the same thing. You'll have things like what else is in here? You'll have assets, which are kind of like these vary. I'll get into those later. And then you have event cards, which are kind of like one-time spells. And you have surges, which I'll definitely get into later. I don't think there have been deck building requirements disclosed yet, but I'm just kind of describing what I saw in the decks provided for the demo. It's also really nice of Ghost Galaxy to give me the demo decks that we were able to play with, so I'm actually able to make this video. But anyway, your goal is to get 7 counters on this quest card here. The quest card says when you journey for the first time each turn, you gain 1 counter on this quest card. Once you get to 7, you flip it over, and then you have to get to 8. So it's pretty much a race to 15 points. So your goal as a hero is to get 7 counters on your quest card, flip it over, and then get to 8 on the other side to win the game. And you get counters on this card by card effects, by journeying to the Overlord side of the board and conquering areas there, which I'll get into later. And then you also have this resistance card in play as well. The resistance card will allow you to spend counters on it to buff certain skill checks. I believe the resistance card also had other benefits, but I don't really remember what those were. And then finally, if your hero dies, you lose the game. So your starting board is going to look something like this, where you'll have your 3 heroes in play, or your 3 characters. I don't really know what to call them because 1 is a hero, 2 are companions. You'll have your quest, and then you'll have your resistance card. and then everything else is going to be played in the center. The remainder of the deck kind of just consists of other variations of cards. Like allies, for example, these can be played and can journey over to the Overlord side of the board to help complete quests with your heroes or your companions. Assets stay in play, and they typically provide some sort of passive effect or can be activated on your turn. Like this one says, when you destroy a scheme, you can pay 3 resistance tokens to gain 1 on your quest. The assets also consist of things like attachments and upgrades, things like that, and also cards that you could just tap in order to activate their action. Then you have event cards. These are like one-time use cards, like spells that you just kind of like play and then discard when they're done resolving. You really just do what the card says. And then you have the surge cards, which these allow you to buff skill checks, which I'm going to get into later. Now, I'm not sure what the difference is between like the colors. Like, for example, if you see Bulgriff and Duonic Priest, one is yellow, one is blue. I'm not sure what that really means. I don't know if it's rarity or faction, because if you look in the lower right corner, there's a symbol that doesn't really have anything to do with the gameplay. I'm guessing that's their faction and where they come from. Maybe there's going to be limitations on deck building. I don't really know yet, but we'll see. So as I mentioned before, you have your heroes and companions that start on your side of the field. But then as you play allies, these are going to play with your heroes and companions. So how heroes work is that when you use them, you could do a variation of actions printed on the center of the card. You can perform as many actions as there are purple pips on it. So if you look at Valindra, Valindra has 3 purple pips, meaning I could perform 3 actions with Valindra. Those actions are chosen from the center of the card here, but the actions need to be performed in order from left to right in the order they are printed. For example, with Valindra, if I start with Scouting, which is this purple footprint icon, I have to do the next 2 actions printed next to the Scouting from left to right. So in this case, I would have to gain Fate and draw a card. That's what these 2 symbols mean. I can't go and evade, I can't go and gain Fate from here, and I can't journey if I choose to start my actions at the purple footprint. So those 3 actions have to be done in that order there. Now, most of the icons are pretty self-explanatory and they're printed on the reference card. I'll just go over them real quick. Fate is your resource to play cards. These are tracked with tokens that you'll get later, so it's not tracked with cards like you would think in like Magic. Drawing a card is self-explanatory. Evading means you get to remove a hunt token from the card, which I'll get into later. Recover just heals the damage from it. Gain resistance puts a counter onto the resistance card, which will allow you to buff things later. Special means you do the card's special ability. So for example, Zandarius has that special effect to play an ally for -2 cost. So that will, if you're doing this icon here, you'll be able to do this special ability. And then we'll go back here. Scout allows you to peek at a veiled card. So basically, the Overlords will be playing cards face down, and Scout will allow you to just peek at a veiled card, which is a face down card. And then Journey, of course, lets you move that hero that you're doing that action on to the opponent's board in order to complete a quest, also called schemes in this game. So these cards also have a resource cost in the upper left corner. So you see Bulgriff has a 3 cost. So it costs 3 of your resource tokens in order to play him. It's pretty self-explanatory. You also have the card's health in the upper right corner. So this one has 3 health. You have some pips underneath the resource cost, and some pips at the bottom of the card, which I'll get into later. Now, if you played Arkham Horror, the card game, you may be familiar with these pips and how they work, but we'll get into that a little bit more after. So like I said before, assets are pretty unique. They stay in play until they're not in play anymore. I'm guessing your opponent will be able to destroy them using certain card effects and things like that. But then you also have some things like attachments, like Adventurer's Pack. So you can attach this to a hero or to any sort of character card, and when it says, when attached character challenges a scheme, you can draw 1. Pretty straightforward. It just gets equipped to them. I assume if that hero or ally or whoever was to die, then the attachment would go with it, but we'll see. That would make the most sense to me. And then events are pretty much one-time use cards that are played and then discarded when they're done resolving. Pretty much just do what the card says. It says action before it, which I don't really like. I think they should remove that action word because it almost seems like you have to play the card first and then like exhaust it to use it and then it gets discarded. It's a little confusing because other cards like, let me see. I think there were some artifacts, or not artifacts, assets. Yeah, asset, for example, Zephyric Rune, has an action with that arrow, means you tap it and then you do what it says. So yeah, having action on the events is just kind of like redundant, I guess. It doesn't really need to be there. You just do what the card says and then discard it. Lastly, we have these surge cards. Now, surge cards can be played from your hand when resolving skill checks, which once again, I'm going to get into a little more later. So on the hero turn, we have on the reference card, the first thing you do is you ready your exhausted cards. So any of your character cards that were exhausted, that we either journeyed with, or we did other things with them to do their middle parts, whatever we did, they'll be readied at the start of your hero's turn. Then you can pretty much do as much as you want if you have the cards and resources to play it. You can activate your allies that you have in play, your companions or heroes, whatever. You can play the cards if you have the resources for them. You can activate your assets, like I had mentioned before with that Zephyric Rune, for example. Things like that. There's no order to how you do this, though, which is really cool. But it does make it tough to track sometimes if you have a lot of cards in play. You have to try to remember the specific order in which you need to do things in order to synergize well. But there's no rules to the order of which you use your cards. So that's pretty much it for the hero side. You play your allies, you play your assets, you play your events, you journey out to the Overlord side of the board, and you try to defeat their schemes. I'm going to get into combat a lot more later, but yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. So I didn't really get to play Overlord during my demo. My friend actually played the Overlord side, but I'll do the best I can to see if I remember how his turns played out. So similar to the hero side, the Overlord starts with their Overlord card, and then 2 lieutenants in play, sort of like how on the hero side you had the hero and then you had the 2 companions. This is very similar, both the evil guys. The rest of the deck, same thing, consists of events, surges, just like the hero side, but it also consists of these things called encounters, which are essentially going to be your defense cards for your schemes and your stronghold. Remember what I said before, how when heroes journey, they're journeying to the Overlord side of the board and they're trying to conquer certain areas, or these things called schemes. And you are going to be playing defense cards for your schemes and your stronghold card. Your goal is going to be the same as the hero, to get to 7 plus 8 on your Dominion card. It's called the Dominion for the Overlords. And you need to essentially stop the heroes from defeating these things called the schemes and keep your Overlord alive, and I think your Dominion alive. I can't remember if there's a way to take this out. I know that the opponents or the heroes can actually conquer it because it has a challenge rating here, but I don't exactly remember what they get for doing that. You get counters on your Dominion card in various ways, I think, but the main way my opponent was getting them was through card effects. So for example, the Dominion, if no journey occurred in this card's domain last turn, gain 1, and what this little flag icon means, a counter onto the Dominion. So there's a lot of card effects from the Overlord side that will allow you to score onto your Dominion card. The Stronghold works similarly to the Resistance card for the heroes, so this scheme, same thing, pay up to 3 counters to gain that much power towards this challenge. I'm pretty sure the Resistance card, I have it right here. Where is it? It's pretty much worded exactly the same with just different icons. And then you have your schemes. The schemes actually have a different back to the other cards. These backs are actually really cool, if you see. The schemes are actually going to be played in a face-down deck next to the Overlord player, because these actually get drawn from at the start of their turn, and then they'll be able to play one of those schemes. So same thing, at the start of the Overlord's turn, they're going to draw 2 schemes from their face-down scheme deck, and then they're going to choose one to play in front of them on their side of the battlefield. Then they're going to do this thing called collect, which means they're going to do the icons on all of their active schemes. So in this case, I only have the Dominion out, but let's throw like Circle of Blood out and Rebuilding the Empire out. We'll throw these ones out. So if we're going to collect, we're going to do the icons on all those active schemes. So we're going to do these 2 icons, which all the icons are referenced on the Overlord's reference card. We're going to do pretty much all these things, and that's the collect part of that's the collect phase. Next, if they have any exhausted cards, they're just going to go ahead and ready those. And then if there's any villains, so like, for example, if there's any of these guys on the schemes, they're going to return back to the Sanctum, which means they're just retreating out of those schemes back to a spot on the Overlord's player mat. Now the turn plays just like the heroes, where they can play cards for resources and activate cards and things like that. However, things are a little different when playing cards here. As the Overlord, you're going to play encounter cards to your schemes, but I think if I recall correctly, you play them face down, which sounds a little bit weird because they have a resource cost. I'm pretty sure that when the card gets unveiled is when you actually pay the resource cost, and then if you can't pay that. I think the card either gets discarded or goes back face down. I can't exactly remember the rules there. But for the sake of this video, we'll just say face down. Anyway, these cards will help defend the scheme from journeying characters from the hero side. Lieutenants and overlords work the same as the hero characters, but instead of journeying, they will move to a scheme to help defend it, which is that finger icon. I don't know if you can see it. There's like a little finger icon, which is you're essentially committing it to a scheme. And it'll actually tell you, it's commanding, not committing, I'm sorry. Commanding, move this villain to a scheme without a villain and resolve the point effect there. So when I commit Kirith Asmo to the stronghold, it says to scramble all of your veiled encounters, which I kind of mentioned how that works before. So combat, what are all these icons and pips for on all these cards? Like, what the hell do they mean? So let's go a little bit into the combat. So when a hero's character journeys to a scheme, they're going to go head to head with any encounter cards that are there first. Now when the hero chooses to journey, they have the option to take any other unexhausted allies with them on the journey, so you can have like multiple characters journeying to the same scheme at one time. But these characters are going to face against the encounter cards in the scheme. So each encounter, and scheme for that matter, have a challenge rating in the lower left corner. I don't know if you can see that. This one has 3 swords stealth. So 3 combat stealth. This challenge rating is what the hero will need to be in order to actually damage the encounter. So this encounter has 4 health, but that's what they are going to need in order to defeat that. So for example, Valindra will journey to the scheme, and we'll say she doesn't know what lies here yet, but she's going to journey over to the scheme, and then she's going to challenge the scheme. Before Valindra can challenge the scheme, which is a second moon mine, she has to first challenge the encounters that are guarding it. So in this case, it's going to be Wrathful Giant. In this case, Wrathful Giant has a a challenge rating of 3 swords and stealth. Valindra has 1 sword and 1 stealth on her stat cards, and so we're definitely gonna fail this unless we could commit cards. So each player can actually commit. So during this combat, each player can look at their hand and they could commit cards towards the challenge rating, but they're gonna play those face down. Valindra's looking at her hand, and she's like, "Oh crap! I don't know how I'm gonna beat this." But hey, I've got let me see. I've got Bogriff in my hand, and then I've got some surges, but I'm gonna get into the surges later. So I need 1 more sword or 1 more stealth. I'm going to commit Bogriff face down. However, the overlords get to do the same thing. But if you have surge cards in your hand, surges can be used to commit to a challenge by bypassing that 1 card limit. So by default, Valindra can only commit, or the hero can only commit 1 card to boost Valindra. But if you have these surges, you can actually commit 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. You can bypass that 1 card limit using these surges. That's what the surge cards do. But remember, the opponent can do the same. So the overlords can go in and they could say, okay, well, I'm going to boost my swords, that way it's going to make it harder to beat. So I'm going to play an enrage and summon forces. So we're going to play summon forces face down, and then we're going to boost it with this surge. Then finally, they say, okay, Valindra flips, the Overlord flips, and they determine who wins and who loses. If it's a tie, the tie goes to the hero because they met or exceeded that skill check, and they'll get to get it. In this case, Valindra had failed that check and would actually take damage here. But let's just say the hero won. If a hero wins, they can then move on to challenging the other encounters or the scheme itself if there are none remaining. They deal damage to the encounter based on how many damage pips are on the hero's card. So Valindra has that 1 little blood icon, so she's going to deal 1 damage to the Wrathful Giant if she won. But then she gets to move on to the second moon mine, and she gets to do another skill check against the 4 book and 4 scroll on the second moon mine. I don't remember what the hero gains for beating an encounter, if they really gain anything at all. Like if I was to beat this Wrathful Giant at something, I don't remember if there's any benefits to that. I don't remember if there's any points that are given or anything like that. But I do know that if you beat the scheme actually grants you that many counters on the quest card that are shown in the upper left corner of the scheme. I believe schemes themselves only need to be conquered once. They don't have a health counter or anything like that. They do have a damage counter on the bottom, so that's how much damage they do if you fail. But they don't actually have a health. So I'm pretty sure if Valintra was to beat the scheme, it just gets discarded. And once again, I just kind of want to go over the Overlord's icons here. So a lot of them are the same: the gain, fate, the draw. There's this hunt, put 1 hunt on any character card. I don't fully remember what hunt does, but I think it allows you to damage the other player's characters without having them journeying to one of your schemes. You can gain stronghold, put 1 counter on the stronghold card. Easy enough. It's sort of like the resistance. You have your special, do that card's special ability, which is that little star icon. You have the command, the point, which I kind of pointed out earlier. So yeah, I know I was kind of all over the place there, but that's pretty much the gist of Echo of Omens. So yeah, from what I remember about the game, it felt incredible to play. It felt so polished and smooth, despite being in such an early alpha state. It felt pretty balanced, which I feel could be very difficult in an asymmetrical game, but that also might be because we were just playing with starter decks, essentially. I do think that the Overlords felt a little more powerful, just because of how easy it can be to get board presence and how difficult some of the challenge ratings were on the encounters, but it could have also been that I was just playing poorly. I know that these cards say placeholder art, but my God, are these cards beautiful. I love the overall design of them. I do think that they could use minor changes for like cleanliness and clarity though. For example, the challenge rating on Overlord cards could potentially use like a dash or a slash or something like that to indicate the power of the skill check required. Just because the number next to all the icons, it's hard to determine whether they are put together or if they mean something completely different. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I was just a little confused with the number next to the symbols, and I still kind of am. For example, I don't exactly remember if the 6 on this means I would need 6 of one of them, or if I could mix and match scrolls and books as long as I get at least 6. I think it's the latter, but who knows. I also think that there are too many sub cards or types of cards in each category. For example, like the character cards, they consist of heroes, allies, and companions, all of which can mean the same thing and pretty much do the same thing, but are different in certain small ways. For example, the allies start in your deck, but the companions start with the hero, and if the hero dies but the companions don't, then you're still alive. It's just like, it's things like that, or how the assets consist of things like attachments, locations, equipment, etc., all doing different things. It just kind of makes things a bit complicated, especially when learning the game for the first time. Also, making the player the hero side while also making the hero a card type can get a little complicated. The Overlord's characters seem to be classified as villains, yet there's no classification for the hero's character cards. I think they're just called characters or something like that. Encounters seem weird too, just like the name of them. Encounters seem to be used to describe various things defending the scheme, but it just seems weird calling like a giant an encounter in this case, and a giant being categorized with a portal or something like that. In general, I really think it's just the semantics and the wording that needs to be changed for clarity, but I really enjoy the gameplay a lot. As of right now, I don't really have many complaints about the game itself. There may be ways to simplify it a little bit because it might feel a little convoluted at certain times, but I'll need to play it a little bit more to really judge it and form a strong opinion there. Ghost Galaxy also mentioned on their page that they plan on using, quote-unquote, some of the extraordinary technology that is behind KeyForge, and I'm not really sure what this means, especially when looking at the cards and thinking of how the game operates and how it's going to sell. If I had to guess, I'm thinking like the action pips in the center of the card could possibly be unique and randomized during the card generation at the factory, or maybe like the pips to commit the skill checks in the upper left corner, maybe those can be randomized, or maybe the overall power pips of the characters on the bottom of the cards. I'm not really sure, and I don't know if they really know at the moment. I didn't really ask them, but it's possible that that information can't really be disclosed right now. Like I said before, everything in this game is subject to change. I mean, seriously, everything. I hope they don't change too much about the gameplay because I really do love it in its current state. I love the gameplay, I love the card design, I love the artwork even though it's placeholder art. I love the overall aesthetic. My favorite thing is definitely those Arkham Horror-like skill checks where you have to commit cards from your hand in order to boost your skill check. I love those simple, like match the symbol on the card, but then also being able to strategically manipulate that value and play a trick-taking game with your opponent. There's like a a bit of a bluffing aspect to the card commitments and a lot of strategy to the game that one doesn't typically think about in a TCG. The concept of the game is phenomenal, and I'm really excited to see this game hit the shelves. I really hope that this game blows up in the future and it sees some sort of organized play and popularity. I'm not thrilled that it's going to be a constructed deck game like Magic because, as I said before, I hate the idea of net decking and toxic metas that screw up the competitive scene, but at least I have KeyForge for now as my escape from it in the meantime. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope to bring you all more Echoes of Omens content in the future as soon as I know more about this damn game. So take care, y'all. Have a good one.